Hello and welcome to day 89 of Dungeon 23. Today is going to be the second to last room. Obviously tomorrow is going to be the final one. It's an exit going downward and then going down to level 4. And what I have today is, as you can probably see here, I have a new zombie token just because I don't really like the way this one looks too much. It's a bit too small. So I have a new one. And to christen that new token, we're gonna put a slightly modified monster in this room here, and it's going to be a zombie ogre, basically a large sized, a lot tougher zombie, but we are gonna tone it down a bit because they are tougher enemies. And with kind of how we design it, I kind of want it to be where it is a relatively slow moving but still pretty hard hitting enemy. Something that's more of a an obstacle than an actual monster. Although it is still going to be a monster, obviously. So before we get into statting out this guy and modifying his stats, we're going to sketch out the room. Alright, so the way our zombie is going to work, our ogre zombie, the first thing is that they are sized large, which means that they occupy a little fully. The amount of space a creature occupies based on their size is a bit sketchy, but they occupy basically a 10 by 10 space. And there was an issue that I didn't realize that you could squeeze through smaller spaces at half movement, but we're just gonna say this guy can't. He's just too clumsy. So let us go ahead and, before we get to that actual details, let's just give this guy a name. Ogre zombie. Spelled that wrong, even though it is spelled pretty weird. Although I can't really imagine how else you'd spell it. Maybe O-G-E-R? That just seems weird. Anyway, they have an armor class of 8. They're remarkably easy to hit. And they have an HP of 85. We're just going to give this guy an HP of, let's do 95. A little bit tougher, but maybe like an extra hit or two. And that's because we wanted to be like a thing that is not necessarily killed and defeated, but something that is maneuvered around. And normally they have a speed of 30 feet. We're going to change this guy so he's a speed of only 15. That's the first change we're going to make. Actually, the first change we made was he cannot squeeze through smaller spaces. Not squeeze into spaces. Like all undead, he has an immunity to poison and the poison condition. Dark vision 60 feet, that's pretty all for the given. It's not anything special to this ogre zombie. His undead fortitude is a little bit higher, I believe. I believe regular zombies, it's like 3 plus the DC of the damage taken. But it's 5 plus damage taken is DC. Or rather, 7. It's a bit weird how it works, but the idea is that if this guy does get really low, he's still probably not going to be able to get killed. And the only other change, other than his speed and the fact he's clumsy, he can't climb into spaces, his dex is already -2, so he's already not going to be hitting things too well. Or grabbing things. We're going to change up his attack. Now, normally they have a Morning Star, which, with their proficiency and their high strength, is a +6 to hit. And it does 2d8 plus 4 damage. We're going to, like, basically, not entirely, but kind of half that. So, we're not going to give him a Morning Star. We're just going to give him his fists. Or just call it a slam. Because that's what all the undead have. And most creatures have, like, a slam attack just to signify that it could be a kick, it could be a punch, it could be a a slap for some reason. And I generally like that because it's kind of annoying how almost all the monsters don't have like not accurate, but like real unarmed attacks. Like you think like a goblin would have like a bite attack or like a scratch you, but no, they just have a short bow and a short sword, or rather a scimitar and a short bow, or is it a dagger? I don't know. That's missing the point. Anyway, so instead of +6, we're only gonna give it a +3 to hit. That's his, not hit. Of course, reach is still 5 feet. We're not gonna give him any extra reach. One target, which is, you never really see multiple targets. It's usually one target and then the additional not flavor text but ribbon text at the end says you can also target an additional creature, unless it's like a save, in which case it just says like DC whatever instead of plus to hit, or like the radius. But you don't really see that in attacks, mainly spells, which are a bit different. It's very annoying how there's no like, here's a blank format of how we do our attacks. Anyway, so the hit is going to be, originally it's 2d8 plus 4. We're going to instead just lower to 2d6 plus 4. And can I click on this? I'm still getting used to like the formatting of Roll20 and how to all the macros and all that stuff, so I'm just gonna try to avoid it. Even though it's gonna be super useful later on when I actually, well, I run games now. There's always like a nebulous future point where everything works better, but that's just life, I suppose. Anyway, in addition to this guy being slow, hits things less often, on top of him he's gonna have like a chest strapped to his back, kind of like a backpack that's like chained up to him. There is a locked chest, chain to the back of the ogre zombie. Lock pick DC. It's gonna be 13. Now it's a low lockpick DC because we have to kill him, and that's enough of a challenge already. Or you could climb up him and then open it that way, while he's still like trying to grab you, and he's trying to like fight the guys that are at the ground while you're climbing on his back and trying to lockpick, and then maybe the mage is like using mage hand. Well, no, you'd have to be a arcane trickster to use the. Well, I don't know if you need to be an arcane trickster. I know that you specifically have the ability to use fine manipulation with your mage hand, but also as a bonus action. Anyway, the point is that you could have a whole thing where like you have some people distracting it, some people trying to climb up it to get the chest, and all that stuff. And I don't have like the chain DC in my head memorized, but just use like manticles or the chain item in the DMG as like your reference for the AC and HP of it, if they want to attack it directly. And it contains, let's see here, 1 keg of ale, which is just a consumable adventure good. Maybe consider it part of a ration. It's more of like a flavor thing. It's a cool reward to have, and something to trade later. 1 random musical instrument. Let's see here. Ornate musical. Alright, so musical twice. I say random because ideally, if it's a bard in the party, then just make it whatever one they want to have, because it's more of a treasure good. But it's all cool to have. Like, yeah, I have the loot, but in this dungeon I found a cooler loot. It's not mechanically better, but it looks cooler. It's described as being cooler, and that may not seem like a lot because there's no physical representation of it. It's just not even like a drawing. It's like a describing a thing to somebody. It's all about their imagination. But it's explicitly stated to be valuable, which is what's important. But in addition to that, it is also going to have 2 sleeping rolls and 1 hooded lantern. Just some generic adventuring gear with also a keg of ale, which is a cool flavor thing, and then also a pretty valuable treasure item that could also be used as a collectible. You know, something that the party wants to hold on to because it looks cool. And we have our speed capped, which I like. His AC is already pretty low, and pretty high health. He can't move into these 2 rooms here, so once this barrier is down, then he can't go through these ways here. Can't get to the exit here. His to hit is lower, hitting half as much, and lower damage. So that's basically it for this guy. He has his treasure, his loot, that's, well, possibly a loot, in the chest that's strapped to him with chains. It's a guy. We're gonna save it. Here's our big ogre zombie. We don't put doors here because the rust monsters would have eaten the hinges and knobs. And this has been day 89. Tomorrow's gonna be our last day of this floor. And until then, thanks for watching and or listening. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And I apologize for the poor quality. It's not going to get any better.